Welcome back to Beginning Band COVID Companion, Distance Learning for Band. This is video 2 of a 4-part series. You already learned how to assemble and disassemble your instrument. Now we will learn how to maintain the mechanics of the instrument and disinfect it. Then we will learn how to make beautiful sounds on our drum pad and bell kit. Lastly, we will perform our first notes. I'm going to teach you how to maintain and disinfect your instrument. First, just listen. Don't try to maintain and disinfect yours yet. That will be next. As a percussionist, do wash your hands before you practice and after. Wipe down anything that you touched with your hands with some sort of disinfectant. Store your instrument in a dry and safe place. Do not consume food near your instrument. Don't allow grease, sand, dust, or dirt near your instrument. Make sure not to use dangerous chemicals without reading instructions first. Do not remove the bars of your bell kit. Do not use the incorrect sticks or mallets on an instrument. For instance, a snare drum stick is not designed for a xylophone. And definitely do not use your instrument as a table. Percussion is unique in that we are the only section in the band that plays over 200 different instruments. Because we play so many different instruments, and many of them can be expensive, we are the only section that sometimes shares instruments. Because of this, it is extremely important that you own your own mallets for every instrument that you need to play so that you don't have to share things that you touch. It is important that you wash your hands before and after you play every time. And it's important to avoid touching the shared instruments with anything other than the designated stick or mallet. For instance, you do not need to touch the snare drum to play the snare drum, you just have to touch your sticks. Your instrument is not a table. Your instrument has never been a table, and your instrument will never be a table. Do not ever set anything on top of your instrument. Drum heads are remarkably fragile and should be only touched in the manner in which they are intended. Always play the instrument with the sticks intended for that instrument. Some incorrect sticks can damage different instruments and make ugly sounds. For instance, you would never play with brass mallets on a marimba. You would break the marimba. When you're done playing a percussion instrument, you should always cover it if it has a cover, and put it away in storage if it's meant to be stored there. Dust and moisture can cause expensive damage to percussion instruments. Also, properly stowing away instruments in their covers and in their storage areas deters other non-percussionists from touching our stuff. Soft mallets and mallets with yarn are easily damaged. Because of this, avoid ever touching the sensitive part of the mallet with your hands or with your face. If oils or dirt accumulate on the mallet, then they can transfer to the instrument as well and damage that too. Never get anything wet that's made out of wood. So disinfectant wipes are out of the question for marimbas and xylophones. Disinfectant wipes can be used on anything metal, but make sure to follow up with paper towels so as to remove the residue after the amount of time printed on the disinfected label. Some of them are 30 seconds, other of them are a minute, but once it's done doing its job, you should probably wipe it down with a paper towel. For anything except for the snare drum, you should be able to wear gloves to protect yourself from germs on these shared instruments. It's uncommon for snare drum players to wear gloves because they would likely drop their sticks. Wash your hands before you play your instrument because you don't want your instrument to become infected with anything on your hands. Also, wash your hands when you're done playing your instrument because you didn't want anything that was on the instrument to get you infected either. The National Federation of State High School Associations published these findings on June 19th, 2020, as guidance for how long you need to quarantine your instrument regarding the deactivation of COVID-19 on that instrument. Any part of your instrument that is made out of metal will deactivate after up to 5 days. Any part of the instrument that is wood will deactivate after 4 days. Anything plastic, after 3 days. Any strings attached to the instrument will be deactivated after 3 days as well. Anything that has cork on it will deactivate after 2 days. Since many things on our percussion instruments cannot be sanitized with standard wipes or chemicals due to their fragile nature, the best thing to do if you know that you or somebody near you has been infected with the COVID-19 virus is to put that instrument in quarantine, meaning that nobody else touches it and it's put away for up to 5 days. This significantly increases the chance that the COVID-19 on that instrument will have already deactivated. Now that we've finished talking about how to maintain and sanitize our instruments, let's try to do that together. Now that you've listened to me maintain and disinfect my percussion instruments on the slideshow, I think it's time that we try to do some of this together. So if you have your bell kit nearby, you can go ahead and get that and kind of follow along with some of these concepts that we're going to be talking about. The first and most important thing about maintaining your percussion instruments is to respect the property. We are unique in that we play over 200 different kinds of percussion instruments in the classroom alone, meaning that we often have to share some of them. Now, some things, like a xylophone, you can't exactly put in your backpack and take home to practice, so they have to stay at school and get shared. However, one thing that you can do is have your own set of mallets for every different instrument that you can play, so that you're always prepared and you're not depending on other people to provide that for you. Additionally, having your own mallets to play with that you will actually touch will also keep yourself safer from germs. Respecting the instrument also has to do with how you treat the property. So for instance, this instrument is not a table. If I need to go change my stick outs and I have my music folder and I don't really want to go find a music stand to put it on, we're not going to put our music on the instrument. We're not going to put our coffee mug on the instrument. We're not going to put anything on a percussion instrument that is not explicitly supposed to go there, including using the correct sticks for the job. Now, these are some hard plastic mallets that are really great for a xylophone. They sound great because that's what they're designed for. I would never attempt to take a fuzzy bass drum mallet and try to play a xylophone with it. That could harm either the instrument or the stick. For instance, my Vic Firth SD1 snare drum sticks are going to sound absolutely terrible on a bell kit. It won't have any resonance and it'll sound really harsh. I would never play with yarn mallets on a metal instrument other than maybe a cymbal, because playing with yarn mallets on your bell kit could actually shred the yarn, since metal is a lot tougher than a couple of strands of yarn. Using strong mallets, like brass mallets, on a wooden instrument, especially a marimba, could actually permanently ruin that instrument too. So we use percussion instruments as they're designed. It's also really important to put covers on the instrument. Not only does it protect the instrument from dust and sand and dirt and humidity even, but it also is kind of a sign that says, if you're not a percussionist, don't touch this instrument. You need to step up as a team and guard and defend your percussion instruments. Trust me, it'll pay off. In terms of disinfecting your percussion instruments, we don't have time to talk about all 200 instruments and how to disinfect each and every one of them. So we're going to use a couple of rules of thumb just so that we're all on the same page. First of all, washing your hands before and after you play instruments is going to be the best way that you keep yourself healthy and keep your instruments healthy and keep your friends healthy. It's the best way to go. If, for whatever reason, you cannot wash your hands before you play, hand sanitizer does work pretty well. It's not as good, but in a pinch, it's definitely a better alternative than doing nothing at all. We have some really powerful chemical sprays that are really great for cleaning the metal parts of our instrument. So if you needed to pick up and move, for instance, a metal snare drum stand, this spray would be awesome for that because the metal stands up to these kinds of sprays. However, instruments that are made out of wood, like the xylophone or the marimba, absolutely cannot have any moisture on them. So spraying them down with some disinfectant could actually ruin the instrument. The good news is these instruments that are particularly sensitive to these chemicals in these sprays are not instruments that you ever need to actually touch with your hands, right? Because you would just grab the appropriate sticks for playing them, and then the sticks would touch the instrument instead of your actual hands. So these instruments should be relatively safe to share. The last thing to talk about in terms of maintaining our percussion instruments is the fact that drum heads need to be replaced every once in a while, even if they are treated with absolute respect. And if you own your own drums at home, that's awesome. You should be replacing your drum heads about once a year. Hopefully your band director is able to replace your heads in your classroom about every half year to year as well. One thing that you need to know about the drum heads that we're sharing is that they're actually very sensitive to pressure, which is why we're not going to be leaning on them or putting anything on top of the drum head that doesn't belong there. The last thing that we need to talk about when we're talking about maintaining percussion instruments is that each percussion instrument needs to be moved in a certain kind of way. Hopefully your band director is going to be able to give you the different rules in terms of moving all of the instruments. However, if that doesn't happen, let me give you one really, really strong tip. We're never going to move a percussion instrument by the top, on the parts that make sound. We will always move our percussion instruments by the parts that are supported. So you can move things by the bass and by the parts that have wheels, but grabbing a timpani by the rim and moving it could damage the tuning mechanism. Grabbing a suspended cymbal by the cymbal and moving it could actually bend or break the metal. We only move our percussion instruments by their bases. And hopefully that covers the bases of maintaining and sanitizing your percussion instrument.